So welcome to the webinar series, Practice-Based Learning. My name is Kalima Ibrahim. I'm Chair of RCOT Council for England and Chair of the England Board, and also a lecturer at University of East London. And so we're RCOT, so we champion occupational therapy. We're here to help achieve life-changing breakthroughs for our members, for the people they support, and for society as a whole. We promote the value of occupation in improving people's health and well-being. We promote the value of occupational therapy as a means of improving people's health and well-being. So we have a vision that people everywhere value the life-changing power of occupational therapy. So our profession is growing. So we have over 45 education providers delivering over 100 programs in the UK with over 7,000 learners and 1,700 new graduates. So increasingly diverse cohorts, experiencing a range of practice-based learning opportunities across the 4 pillars of practice. So we need to think differently about our placement opportunities to meet the needs of our learners, our services, and the people that we serve. So the principles of practice-based learning, working together to develop our future workforce, were a set of guiding principles that was launched on the 20th of October 2022, a collaboration with CSP and RCOT. So these are the 7 principles, and there'll be a link in the chat that you can click through, and then you can find the principles on the website and you can have a read through. So our webinar today is called Practice-Based Learning, Your Legacy, Inspiring Stories from Inspired Learners. So the session planning, so we have 2 presentations today. So each presenter will present, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end for both presenters. So the webinar is relevant to practice-based learning principles 1 and 4, and also the domain 5 of the learning and standards for pre-registration education and the career development framework. So your questions and comments, so please put your questions and share your thoughts in the chat and also on social media. It's hashtag RCOTPBL, and these are our Twitter handles, and you can just have some conversation in the chat and via Twitter as well. And if you just like to put your questions in the chat as well as you go through any questions you have for each presenter, you can put them through, and then we'll get to those at the end. So our first presenter is Practice-Based Learning, Our Legacy. So it's by Claire Headley, and she's the OT Practice Education Lead at NHS Scotland. Go ahead, Claire.
Great, thank you so much, Kalima. Nice to see so many people here on a Monday morning. I am presenting a practice-based learning, the legacy. Unfortunately, the students that did this placement weren't able to come because they're actually currently on placement, so they haven't been able to be released for that. There we go. Okay, but I'm going to introduce them anyway. As Kalima said, I'm Claire Headley. I'm the Practice Education Lead currently for occupational therapy at NHS National Education Scotland. So to meet our learners, their lovely faces. There we go. So the inspired learners that I worked with and inspiring learners were from Napier University in Edinburgh. And we had 1 second year, Jess, and then we had 4 first years, Molly, Poppy, Claire, and Alex. This is them all being here on screen, but unfortunately not here in person. And what did they do? They had an 8-week placement at Central Scotland Adventures in Auchenstary Marina, Kilsyth, near Glasgow in Scotland. And I hope you agree it's a very idyllic setting for a placement. And this is the guys on their paddleboards just starting off. And what did they do? They did a role emerging placement, which was peer assisted with 5 of them, a project-based and also long arm supervision. And it was the first of its kind that we've ever done. And their project work within it was to identify the social, emotional and well-being benefits of paddleboarding as a meaningful occupation. And as time went on, they actually changed this to the benefits of blue space and made it bigger than what we initially thought, which was great. So what did they do? They did team building. As you can see here, they were making paddleboard snakes, which was great for them to build up in their peer-assisted learning roles and get to know each other and trust each other. They went kayaking and looked at kayaking as a meaningful occupation for individuals. And they also went tri-showing, and they worked with Cycling Without Age, which is a new project that's going on up here to really promote cycling whatever age you are, and linking in with the new resource that's just come out from Sports for Confidence with the therapeutic use of cycling for healthcare professionals. So they were pretty busy. And what did they learn? So they linked this into the strategic priorities for RCOT. So they learned to rise up, and they were being bold and a progressive advocates for the profession, as you can see, and hopefully showing what the power of occupational therapy can do in a non-traditional setting, if you want to call it that. They opened up. They joined forces and formed alliances. We had 4 people involved with this, with NHS Lanarkshire. They had Napier University, Central Scotland Adventures, and ourselves at National Education Scotland involved. And it allowed people across the board to see what occupational therapy could be a solution for their needs. They lifted the team throughout their journey because it was challenging, it was tiring. They were on the paddle boards 5 days a week, but by working as a team, it enabled them to take safe risks and allow them to develop, and definitely creating occupational therapists of the future. And they also built up. So they created a dynamic, as you can see, value-driven placement that enabled all involved to achieve their purpose and meet their learning outcomes. So what else did they learn? And learn with the values of RCOT. So they learned the impact. So they were making meaningful differences to all the work they did. They were providing a safe space to talk, to discuss, or just to be really with each other. And they went above and beyond. There's no doubt about this for the people that need us. So I don't know if anyone on here is from the Glasgow area, but offering intervention while on a paddleboard on the Forth and Clyde Canal in the Scottish autumn definitely goes and qualifies for above and beyond. They definitely challenged each other and their clients. They found new and better ways to make things happen. They were brave and definitely bold in our ideas and actions. And they definitely chose courage over comfort. Before they came on this placement, they were really anxious. They didn't know what to expect. I would say that they all put themselves forward for it through an expression of interest. And they were willing to be those pioneers for this placement. And it was certainly a bold idea. And they definitely challenged themselves, and they definitely challenged each other and the status quo of what occupational therapy should be offering. And it definitely, as a team, they challenged the status quo. So they elevated, they took the risk to come on this placement and knowing very, very little about it. They were accessible and collaborative, and as I said before, the collaboration between the 4 organisations, and we all united and moved towards together. We were all learning in this together, so we were all being learners. With that as well, there was obviously different stages for the group to form and work together, and I think the key thing was that they valued each other and they celebrated those differences, and they were approachable. They were genuine and they were trustworthy. To put learners onto a canal is a little bit anxiety provoking for a practice educator, but they definitely proved their trust there. And again, they shared their vulnerabilities, they listened to each other, and they truly believed in what each other was doing and what each other could bring to the group, which was actually one of the most inspiring parts for me to see as a practice educator. So this placement for them faced quite a lot of skepticism. People were like, how can you possibly learn what occupational therapy is when you're on a board? And our argument to that was actually it's fundamental because you're showing the core of occupation. And that's exactly what they learned on this. They fed back that they understood the significance of occupation and just being and being able to engage in that. And they understood how the use of occupation helped us connect with the world, and especially with blue space, and how that was really helping people connect with nature. Sorry, excuse me a little minute. And they also found that although paddleboarding can be seen as an exclusive sport, they have now explored that it can be actually very inclusive and explored barriers. They were making paddle for someone with a congenital upper arm defect, and they were able to get that person to use that paddle. They were getting people who had total hip replacements on the board, obviously within safe timescales, and showing them how they could get on boards differently if they fell into the water. It was a brilliant way for them to look at activity analysis, and they used the POP model to do that. Challenging at first for them, but once they got the hang of it, they did extremely well with it. They showed that meaningful occupation improves well-being, and they saw that firsthand by people getting on the boards. And they also showed that paddleboarding as an occupation allows choice. So you chose whether to go out in the water, you chose what you wear, you chose how far you go, you chose how far to push yourself. They showed that it allows control of your choices and it allows you to do and be. So they learned the social benefits, they learned a sense of belonging, and they'd learned a sense of solidarity and connections. I don't know if any of you paddleboard, but certainly it's a unique community that suddenly you've got a lot of support from individuals, and that's what they found there. And the social benefits of it as well, coming back after you've been for a paddle and someone providing soup and hot chocolate and having that chat and that space is equally as beneficial as actually doing the activity in itself. So they also learned the emotional benefits. And this was really interesting because the whole team said that they learned them individually and they felt they were then able to better pass them on to who they were working with. So they learned that the blue space provided relaxation, stress relief, a freedom, a sense of calm, a restoration, and a sense of achievement. What the student group told me is that when everything was going pear-shaped and they were under so much pressure from assignments or anything else they had to do, having to work, etc. The minute they got on the water, they felt all these things and they could see how this would be really beneficial to someone who was either suffering anxiety, depression, etc. So they were firsthand able to feel the benefits of it. They learned certainly to be brave and to be bold. They became great fans of Brené Brown's work and they were being courageous as well. They learned to ask why, which is, for those that know me, is one of the important things that I say. They ask, why are we doing this? What's the point in this? But equally important, they learned how to ask why not? Why can't we look at this? Why can't we look at paddleboarding as a meaningful intervention, or try-showing, or running? Why can't we look at these different things that we're not doing at the moment potentially? And they also learned how to apply the OT process. And I think it's given them a really good founding, and they would agree it's given a really good foundation of how to move forward and be really effective OTs. They learned team building and communication, and how to communicate in some very challenging circumstances. And they became the most resilient learners I think I've met in my whole career. And they also learned autonomy and how to be autonomous learners. So how did they do this? They did a literature review for us. They vlogged, and I'm just going to show you, hopefully going to show you one of the vlogs now.
We're a group of occupational therapy students from Edinburgh Napier University, currently on placements. I'm Jess, and I'm a second year. This is my third placement, and certainly my most unusual. Then we have Poppy, Alex, Molly and Claire, who are all first years on placement 1. Our placement is the first of its kind, in a diverse setting. We get long-arm supervision, and it involves peer-assisted learning. While it seems like we just have a lot of fun in a beautiful setting, and we do, we are also working on a project for NHS Education for Scotland, which placement is in partnership with, looking at the social, emotional and well-being benefits of paddleboarding. It involves early starts, many of which are rainy. There's lots of wiggling in and out of wetsuits, and finding the time to work when we're not in the water. But we all love it and feel very grateful for this opportunity.
Okay, so how else did they learn? And this is one that actually I was so impressed with. This is one of our students produced as a reflection, and quite similar to the Kawa model that lots of our learners would use. And this is her reflecting on what she'd come from. So the roots is where she come from. Can this project benefit us? Can I contribute to this project? Can I learn from this project? And will my lack of strength in paddleboarding cause problems in this project? And then as the project went on, she started to grow, and all these leaves here are then, and the branches are what she grew to, and what she felt she had gained. And the river here is what actually contributed to her learning and how that helped her learning. And I just think it's a lovely way for our learners to express themselves in a different way, and it was lovely to share that. And then another way that they did was reflection. And again, this is a lovely way for her to capture the reflection. And we had a chat about this as we went through, and the weeds here are her feeling slightly bogged down by everything, and the weeds would capture her and bring her down. The swan here is very much that she was looking like a swan, but under the surface, her legs were going 90 to a dozen, trying to keep up with everything. The calming waters was when everything was going fine and our board was level and she felt level. The red clouds was when things were just a bit difficult for her and turbulent, and she didn't know if there was a storm coming. And again, the wind kind of just taking her along. Again, a lovely way for learners to reflect on what they've learned. Two of the group also did an amazing blog, which is online with AHP Scott blogs at the moment. And they did reflections on doing, being, belonging and becoming occupational therapy students on paddleboard placement. And it really was an amazing blog. I would recommend that you have a look at it because it really shows what they learned during this placement. Another one used the Kawa model as a case study to show what they'd learned. And you can see how they've really adapted that to look at the placement they were on. Looking at the water, how the life and priorities for this individual were coming to paddleboarding, wants independence to move out of home, and wants to reduce negative self-talk. The riverbanks were the environment and what was either holding up or hindering him. The spaces there were to enhance his occupational flow, stuff like setting SMART goals, joining local water sports clubs and finding other activities that he enjoys, and also going on to additional grips. The rocks were the obstacles and challenges, so the anxiety, low self-esteem, low motivation. And this young man described himself as a bumbling oaf, how all that kind of was hindering him and not allowing him to explore his full potential. The driftwood, which was the influencing factor. So if you are paddleboarders, you know there's stuff like reeds and boards and boats that get in the way. This chap was considered a natural, a great sense of humour, but he was frustrated by his mental health issues and stuck in a rut. And felt that he would benefit from more group sessions. And the overall sort of impression from this young chap was that he'd hugely benefited from these paddleboarding sessions, and it's been brilliant to gain the client's trust and share information. So again, a lovely, lovely way to look at how to illustrate what these guys had learned on placement. So finally, what did the students say? They've said an awful lot all the way through, and they were very much part of this presentation that we put together. But I think I'm going to let you read this yourselves, actually, because I think this really sums up what they were saying about occupational therapy and Blue Space. So again, saying that the experience should be widely available, it should be available on prescription, and exploring that further. Another one of our students was saying true partnership when working with people, in that building from their input, history and prior knowledge, as well as getting creative with the resources we can have to go along the way in the solution we create together. And that to me epitomises OT, our strategic values and our visions. And then one about peer-assisted learning, which again, I think was really interesting. It allowed the first opportunity for the second year in a safe environment to explore her leadership skills. And she was able to offer mentoring advice to first year students during the placement. And that really showed her her ability to take on leadership roles and tasks. So all in all, this was a very good learning experience. They certainly inspired me and have reignited a passion in OT for me. Just a point of note, we now have a second placement in this setting, which is looking at how the public health agenda in Scotland can relate to this. We're going to have a third placement, and then a fourth. We've got a 2-year plan in place, and hopefully then we will be looking at NHS Lanarkshire to send some patients or clients, service users into the paddleboarding and the Blue Space environment. And the students just wanted to thank everybody that was involved in it. So yeah, thank you so much. That's me.
Hi, thanks very much, Claire. So any questions for Claire, just put in the question and answer section and box, and we'll get to all the questions after the second presenter. So our second presenter is practice-based learning, and Laura Ingram. She's the R&D lead, occupational therapy and lead practice education coordinator at the Occupational Therapy Service and at SBUBHB. And Dion Sutton, an occupational therapist who was a former pre-registration student at the School of Healthcare Sciences at Cardiff University. Okay, so over to you, Laura.
Good morning, everyone. Just working out how to move the slide on. 2 seconds. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for that introduction. It's a pleasure to join you this morning. We're also joined by another previous learner, Colewood Smith. So I will look forward to handing over to the learners. But just to let you know, prior to me being at the Health Board, Swansea Bay University Health Board, full-time, I held a part-time associate lecturer role at Cardiff University for 4 years and came back full-time to the Health Board last summer, where I have a split research clinical role, but also a lead in practice education for OT in the Health Board. And it's kind of with all of those hats that I'm speaking to you this morning prior to introducing you to the learners. So just to reflect very briefly on legacy, you know, the title of the session this morning, when I looked at and reflected on some of the quotes in terms of what is a legacy, you know, sort of what we leave behind, what we plant and sort of nurture for the next generation, it seemed to kind of represent a sort of personal contribution to the future generation. But I think it's really important to say that all of the opportunities that we're going to be sort of talking about in this session really are a combination of forces in terms of very much partnership working. You know, there's been a range of individuals, leaders, clinicians behind all of these opportunities. There's very much the sort of efforts of a collaboration that have enabled the opportunities that hopefully have created sort of inspiring opportunities for the learners. So what I will be just very briefly talking about is kind of why we felt the need to embed some changes within our practice placement opportunities within the Health Board. So we'll be describing, you know, locally what that was like for us, but then to importantly hand over to the learners for them to talk you through how their opportunities have contributed to their development, and to think about, you know, what we have learned throughout this process and as a health board, what we kind of need to consider for the future. So I think, you know, this isn't unique to our organisation in Wales at all. There have been many challenges, particularly over the last few years, that are sort of national. We've definitely seen an increase in commission placements, which is a really positive sort of step in the right direction for occupational therapy, you know, the result of sort of strategic workforce planning. However, this has posed challenges within the Health Board in terms of trying to find an increasing number of placements year on year. So I think to date, our highest number of placements for one cohort of students has been 29 across the service. And I'm not quite sure how that equates to other organisations, but for us, it certainly, you know, is challenging in terms of finding placements amongst the demands of clinical practice, you know, the ever-increasing demands, the ever-increasing changes, you know, service redesign, which of course are all positives in terms of, you know, furthering occupational therapy provision. However, they do make challenges in terms of trying to find, you know, exciting and rewarding placement opportunities regularly. We also know, you know, within our standards of practice, there really is a recognition within education to find a range of rewarding placements a sort of diverse range across all areas of our ever-changing and developing practice. So we have very much tried to rise to that challenge within the organisation. And of course, COVID-19. So again, you know, obviously the universal challenges of trying to find placements amongst many services that were paused, or, you know, meet the needs of learners, or organisation services that, you know, were requiring sort of shielding or you know, remote working. So all of these things have really required a change in approach from us at the Health Board. So what we have considered very importantly is all of the pillars of practice in our development opportunities. So the career development framework talks very much about whole career development, and as such what we have looked to do is provide placements that have provided opportunities for learners across all areas, all pillars of practice. So particularly we have a focus on leadership and project-based or research placements within the Health Board. We have very much drawn on the local expert knowledge and skills of our clinicians, but also our academic partners, you know, the sort of research expertise within the university, and very much work together to provide these opportunities. And this has been really exciting in terms of, you know, this has enabled us then to work with other organisations. So we have had some involvement with expert patient groups. During one project, we've had third sector organisation partnership working, opportunities to work with Public Health Wales, a Welsh Government partner, and, you know, other departments within the Health Board. So all really good opportunities for students to experience learning in sort of quite different circumstances to some of the traditional placements we were offering. And I'm very glad now to hand over to Dion, who will talk you through his experience in a leadership-based placement. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dion Sutton, and I was fortunate enough to experience a leadership placement. Just not sure if that worked. There we go. So just to give you a little bit of an insight really into the placement structure. It was my last placement in university, and I was given the opportunity to experience a virtual placement. During this time, virtual working was a sort of newly emerging area. This opportunity allowed me to continue to work towards my degree as I was unable to risk cross-contamination at the time due to close family members shielding. I felt this was a creative and inclusive way to manage some of the risks that students were facing at the height of the pandemic. This way of working didn't come without its challenges, as virtual technology for client communication were in the initial stages at that time. Fortunately, the educator and members of the team were enthusiastic to embrace this change to the more sort of traditional means of placement facilitation, and my team would plan sort of innovative ways to ensure that I was given ample opportunity to develop my skills. They were mindful of some of the additional challenges of virtual working, such as sort of working in sort of social isolation a lot of the time, and they took appropriate steps then to ensure that I felt supported at every step of the way. Project work was another sort of factor. One of the elements involved in undertaking the placement was project work to improve service development. I was given the responsibility to lead the development of an expert patient programme, and liaise with partner organisations such as Public Health Wales to develop and design a pilot for the project. There was elements of clinical work as well, although web-based. I was given the opportunity to sort of virtually shadow members of the team when completing clinical assessments. This was primarily established through Attend Anywhere, secure video calling system for pre-arranged appointments. I was also able to listen in to assessments conducted via telephone with client consent. And I was able to conduct initial assessments independently with the knowledge learnt over the duration of the placement regarding suggested evidence-based interventions and resources available to me. I was also able to assist members of the team then with digital design of sort of practice resources as well. Another element then was shadowing opportunities of leadership roles. As part of my leadership-based placement, I had the unique opportunity to virtually shadow those in leadership roles. Opportunities were arranged as virtual meetings within my calendar. This allowed me to get a better insight into some of the work involved in managing and leading healthcare services. So here are some of the leadership opportunities that I had. The clinical audit showcase. During my placement, I agreed to present on behalf of my team in the audit showcase. Although I wasn't involved in carrying out the audit itself, it was my responsibility to present it and to contribute by conducting a systematic literature review on the effectiveness of an intervention used in practice. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to take part in this CPD activity as a result of the leadership-based placement. I was able to assess the literature, research literature, which also helped inform my practice and develop my professional reasoning when assessing clients within this setting. I gained a better understanding of the audit cycle and had an opportunity to present my research in a clinical capacity. This aligns with ARCOT's professional standards by utilising research evidence to inform practice, helping to provide safe, effective and high quality care for patients. There was another element then, the pilot group or the self-management course. So the placement included the opportunity to take part in service development and evaluation projects, and I was given the responsibility to adapt a current expert patient programme for chronic pain to deliver a similar expert patient programme, but for those living with fibromyalgia who access the service. This was a fantastic opportunity and enabled those living with fibromyalgia to access a project specific to their unique needs and one that would be meaningful to them. Therefore, it was vital that their voice was heard and they were placed at the very centre of the project. I began by developing a questionnaire to obtain information from those with lived experiences of fibromyalgia who were identified as clients whom had given consent to engage in the development of the project from my educator. Once I had held collaborative discussions with them regarding how they believed that the project should run and which elements that they would find most beneficial, I gathered further feedback from my placement team. A virtual meeting was held with the team and we discussed the sort of strengths and the proposed for the proposed projects and the fears regarding potential pitfalls. This provided us with a useful insight of things that might need to be addressed to ensure the success of the project, such as making considerations for attendees that experience screen fatigue by providing shorter sessions or sessions with regular screen breaks. The information gathered was then used to liaise with Public Health Wales for the development of the expert patient programme. The project was due to be piloted after my placement then had ended. There were shadowing opportunities for leadership roles, as I mentioned. Through this placement, I was given the chance to virtually shadow those in leadership roles. I met with senior managers of occupational therapy service, and we discussed leadership and what this looks like in practice. I gained a better awareness and understanding of quality assurance, finance, and some of the operational planning for the pandemic at the time. I was also taught about performance evaluation and how to interpret and understand some of the statistics and the data gathered all of which was extremely valuable for my future practice. I had an opportunity to learn more about leadership theory. My practice educator arranged for sessions covering theories of leadership and shared some of the knowledge that she had developed throughout her career and study. This was a one-to-one virtual session, and I learned about different leadership styles, the difference between management and leadership, as well as what makes a good leader. In addition, I had the opportunity to improve my understanding of these concepts by enrolling in leadership courses run by Academy Wales, where I was able to develop leadership behaviours and become more self-aware of how I can become a leader irrespective of my position. So for supervision, I had a weekly formal supervision with my educator then. I also had daily check-ins and informal discussion, and this included a debrief after each assessment with my educator, in addition to the daily check-ins then to evaluate sort of daily objectives and to maintain social well-being. I also had access to support from the university, in addition to the halfway visit that was arranged then to evaluate and monitor my progress. So this is just a visual map of where I believed I was before the leadership-based placement, in line with the career development framework. And then after I'd completed the placement, I was able to reflect on this experience and include this in my CPD portfolio. I believe this experience enhanced my development in the level 4 leadership pillar, whereby I would be taking some leadership responsibility for the work of others. And I also felt that this experience allowed me to meet aspects of the level 5 leadership pillar as well, as I could contribute and influence the completion of specific objectives regarding the audit. So in conclusion, some of the outcomes gained from this leadership placement was the progression in the career development framework, the acquisition of skills in leading a pilot project, improved confidence presenting to a range of professionals, and enhanced understanding of the audit process, and an understanding of the importance of leadership in practice, an opportunity to have discussion with those in senior leadership roles, and a better overall understanding of management and leadership. Thank you. I'll pass you on.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Colewood Smith. It's a pleasure to be able to share my experience as well of my non-traditional placement with everybody here today. I actually found that it was a placement that really challenged me for a multitude of reasons, some of which Laura and Dion both touched on, but some that I'll probably discuss a little bit more coming up. But I really do feel strongly that students should be able to undertake more of these project-based placements, because especially as mine was a third-year placement, it really did help with the rest of my degree and then moving forward as a practitioner into the world of work. Just trying to figure out how to use my slides. Oh, there we go. So firstly, like Dion, I'll talk about the placement structure. We were just re-emerging back into the real world again, I guess, after national lockdown. And I think that everybody found that the placement structures had really changed. The area that I went into was community learning disability, and I had a split structure. So I had clinical placement and the project then that I was working on supporting my educator. So that was a service evaluation project. The clinical practice side of my placement continued to run much like all the placements we'd experienced before. I did a lot of MDT work in. The big change was that we went to a lot of virtual assessments and intervention, again, like Dion with Attend Anywhere, which brought many of its own challenges, I think, because we were all still learning at that point how to use it, and with the client base that we had. I did manage to complete some in-person sessions as well, which was really lovely at the time, and I think that really benefited the client group that I worked with. However, running parallel to my clinical practice placement, I had the research project. And as that's the more non-traditional aspect of my placement, that's what I'm going to focus on discussing. So that's where I'll focus. So the project. So I completed partially in office, partially work from home, and a lot of my work from home was completing the project work. I was tasked with supporting my educator to really get the wheels turning on a project that she had proposed previously, which was to look at the views of OTs using MoHost. It was really, really interesting for me because I went in and we had the bones of the work, and then I was kind of given almost free rein really to get it off the ground. So I had to really think about, what does this mean? How do I get it going? And I'm only here for a limited amount of time. So what is it that I'm planning on achieving by the time my placement had finished? So I went about, I created a project timeline, which as you can see, I placed in here. This did change a few times, you know, where you'd have technology failing, so we'd have to rearrange. But actually using this visual timeline really, really helped me. And it's something I actually used then on my dissertation as well, in order to keep me grounded and motivated and to know where I was going. So it really did help develop that sort of forward thinking and planning and time management that maybe I didn't have as much of previously. I completed a literature review, so I had to really develop my understanding of, why are we completing this project? What is it that we're looking for? And how am I going to find that information? I created and amended the consent forms, information sheets. I created a discussion schedule and a semi-structured interview, which I then got to actually complete with OTs within the service. And then, sorry, following that, then I had to learn how to transcribe all of that information. I had support to make sure that I was keeping compliant with information governance, GDPR, all things that I think as a student before that placement, I didn't really qualify how much the time that takes to cover all of those bases and to make sure that actually this is all correct, and how can we then make sure that this information is used appropriately moving forward. So I got to then start disseminating, highlighting key themes, and then I got to hand that over at the end of my placement for my educator and for Laura to kind of really then disseminate it all. But I got to really, I think for me, I felt really good because I feel like I was able to really get it going. You know, the bones were there. I just sort of started adding the meat, so to speak. But yeah, it was hard. It was a hard placement. But luckily, I did have a lot of opportunity for supervision, and I had a dual supervision structure. So I had my placement educator, much like Dion, we had the sort of formal weekly supervisions, which reviewed my clinical practice, my therapeutic skills. We had daily check-ins and informal chats with that, because it was a very different time to be working, and working virtually it could be quite stressful at times. So it was really lovely to have those. Along with that, then I had research check-ins with my educator, and we discussed how the project was going, if there was anything she could assist with, and how I felt that I was managing the split placement and my time. So I also had Laura supporting me with fortnightly virtual meetings, which included sort of research aspects, which included my placement educator, and project progress. She supported with information governance. But I really did find that although I was very supported, I had so much autonomy in what I was doing. It really helped me develop how I was going to work when I qualified. So yeah, I think just kind of to round off what I was talking about is that what that placement helped me to develop professionally and personally. I think prior to the project placement, I didn't actually fully appreciate the value of research and practice. For me, I thought, like, how are we going to even manage that? It's going to be an impossible task. But from this, I had a deeper understanding of the why we complete this research and why it's important that we continue to do that. So I'm actually now an avid supporter of this, and I feel like it's something that I would probably be looking to do in my own practice. This placement also helped me to develop a range of skills, including clinical listening and clinical reasoning. It helped me with planning and time management, which affected my dissertation. And I can see the value in having students be involved in placements like this, because it affects so much more of just their remaining time in university as well before going into the real world, into professional practice. It helped me develop my confidence in speaking to other professionals. I went in and I had to question OTs in practice about their practice and what they felt worked, what they felt didn't work. And as a student, that's really, really, really terrifying, because you don't want to come across as rude. And I think I actually took my career development wheel. I did a presentation in university following placement, and this is where I'd base myself. And previously I'd put myself as a 1 for research because I just didn't get it. I didn't understand it, and I didn't think that it was something that I was ever going to really be able to do. But this placement, actually, I really was able to break it down into steps that were manageable for me. And it actually made my placement a really, really enjoyable one, possibly one of my favorite ones in the whole of my time in university. It was really, really good. And for me, it really highlighted that the importance of these placements, and research is for progress, never perfection. We always need to progress and we always need to move forward. And I think this placement really kind of solidified that for me. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you to Cole and to Dion for sharing their experiences. That's great. Just to finish then, I'm aware of time. These are some of the other opportunities that we've been able to provide to students that are joining us at the Health Board, and some of these opportunities have gone on to enable publication, showcasing, so disseminating some of the examples from the projects through Orient, our research and development network for occupational therapy in Wales. There's been collaboration with the Royal College on furthering some of the work, and one of the projects actually enabled recognition as an Advanced Healthcare Award finalist. So some really exciting projects and opportunities, I'm sure you'll agree. And just finally then, in terms of what we've learnt, we've learnt many things throughout this journey, but I think sharing good practice, shouting very loud about the opportunities that we've been able to deliver, enabling students to get experience in disseminating their work, to prepare them for future practice, where that becomes so important, is vital. But not only that, to also bring other educators and other clinicians on board with these types of ideas. Organisation and communication is key, so we're very instrumental in pre-planning these placements. Permissions often need to be in place. There's lots of pre-placement meetings to try and make sure both student and educator are happy and on board with how the placements might work. I think both students have given examples of supervision sort of frameworks, which are essential, of course. And I think it's just all about planting seeds. So as Cole nicely sort of illustrated, it's just giving students and learners the opportunities to experience areas of practice where they may have less confidence, and enable them to feel that actually that is something that can be continued in practice on qualifying. And really just our next steps, we continue to work with our partner Cardiff University, but we now have 2 new programmes on board in the south of Wales at Swansea and the University of South Glamorgan. So I'm sure there'll be opportunities to work with them on sort of inspiring kind of placement opportunities. Furthering opportunities to showcase some of the work that the students have done is always something that I'm looking for in terms of, you know, their dissemination experience, but really just kind of opening the doors. I think for new graduates, making sure then that we also provide opportunities for them to carry on this type of work should they have been fortunate enough to experience it in their placement. So looking to provide for the graduates, you know, opportunities in this area of their practice, not just stopping at the sort of developing the clinical skills. So thank you very much to everyone.
Sorry, I'm just having issues, technical issues. So thank you for that. So you can all put your cameras on and we just have the question and answer session. Okay, so just looking at it, I think there isn't any questions in the Q&A boxes at the moment. So if you have any questions for the 2 presentations, if you'd just like to put them in the question and answer box. Okay, so I just have a question as well. So I just do asking Laura's group. So were you on your own doing the placements, or were you in a group for your 2 Dion and Cole?
No, I was on my own, and well, not on my own. There were other students within the learning disability setting, but I was the only one sort of working on this project. So from the research aspect, it was me. And yes, we had very different experiences, although we were in the same setting.
Okay. And Cole, was it the same situation for you?
I was alone on my placement as well. Yeah, that's why I think it was so beneficial that we had the daily check-ins, support from the university. At the time as well, we were having a lot of support socially from our university peers as well, through sort of Facebook groups and things like that. So that was a big help at that time. But yeah, I was alone doing the placement.
Do you think it would be useful if you were with maybe more than one of you working on the same projects to bounce ideas off each other and things?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's making sure that as many students as possible get these sort of experiences, isn't it? And it's allowing them to have those opportunities. At the time, it was obviously so difficult because it was sort of, you know, the height of the pandemic, and sort of virtual working was sort of so new. So but definitely, yeah, you know, there's opportunities there for sort of shared learning as well.
Absolutely, especially from, I think, from a project-based setting, because it can feel very overwhelming to feel like, right, where am I starting? How am I going to get to this end point? And when you've got nobody really to bounce ideas off, I know you have your educators and everybody gives you a lot of support, but sometimes you'd be sat at home thinking, right, what's my next step? If you had another student, you would have somebody to bounce those ideas off of. I do see the benefit in having more than one student to take on these roles, but at the same time, you know, I had a lot of autonomy, which I did think really helped for me personally.
Okay.
Currently, actually, we do have a placement where there are 2 students, and actually that is working really well. So I think you know, obviously it also provides 2 placements, doesn't it? So I think you know, we will take from that experience and share that learning so that we can encourage some educators to think about, you know, is there an opportunity to have a group placement on some of these ideas? So I think that's probably something that we will be reflecting on. Yeah.
Okay. And also with your group, Claire, as well, is it a continuous placement as well? Would there be more students placed at the paddleboarding paddleboarding projects moving forward?
Yes, so we've had those guys, 5 of them. We currently have 4 placed in there at the moment right now. We have another 4 planned for May to July, another 4 planned for August to October, and then another 4 or 5 planned for October to December. And then hopefully then that'll just continue on. And we're also considering opening up to EHP sort of students as well, just to make it an even sort of fuller program. So yeah.
Okay, and there is a question in the chat as well. So this is Cole and Dion. How did the university prepare you for the placement?
I think the university prepared us quite well, actually. We had a lot of sort of opportunities as well during that time, wasn't it, to sort of there was a lot of emphasis on the career development framework and how we would develop that over the placement. So going in, we were sort of a little bit aware, weren't we, of what to sort of expect in terms of how we would sort of maximize the opportunities provided to us, really. And I personally felt that was very beneficial moving into the placement, especially during the time of, that time of uncertainty that we all faced. It was like Cole said, I think it was the best placement for me. I really enjoyed it.
I think as well, from my perspective, I had opportunities. We'd been going through sort of research modules in university as well, and we do pre-placement meetings and things like that. So I went and spoke to my educator. She discussed the project, how far she had kind of got with it. So I was aware before placement started, this is what I'm looking at. This is kind of where we're going. I think I'd had a discussion with Laura as well prior to that. My memory is it was 2 years ago, so but there was lots. You weren't thrown in any way, and like you said, you did have the support as well then throughout. So if you felt, I think, at any time overwhelmed, we only had to ask. And I think that's a hard thing as well, to ask for help sometimes. But it was one of those places where you felt like, I just don't know this, and it's fine that I don't know this. So how do I now learn it, and who can I ask to tell me? Which is nice.
And it also prepares you as well for practice as well, isn't it? All the different additional skills that you'll get, especially in research and practice. I think sometimes when we're in practice, we think it's a huge issue to kind of get through, to do research and plus a clinical caseload as well. So when you're a student, it gives you that more time to focus on.
I think that is one of the things that thinking now, as I'm in practice now and kind of moving forward, thinking, right, if I was going to do something like that, having a student to help would be really beneficial. It offers a lot of the additional learning for students. I learned so much that I had like I said, I couldn't quantify it because I was very much I didn't get research, and I didn't understand how you were supposed to complete it in a service development way. But having students, then they do help. I thought I helped anyway. Because it is hard. You've got your caseloads, and you've got this project, and it's almost like burning a hole in your pocket. You're like, I've got to get this started. I've got to get going with this. But I just don't have the time or the resources at this time, or things change. You have emergencies, structures change, all of these things. But taking on placements for project-based learning, I think, really does help with that. And it covers for both parties, I think.
Yeah, you get the service development research done, and plus obviously the students are learning the skills and how to do the process, the project. So yeah. So in terms of so Claire, with your project, the students obviously they do the blogging and the vlogging as well. Have they done any writing up? They've done a blog as well. Is that?
Yeah, so they have to they do the blog, they do a vlog, they have to write up a literature review. And then at the end of their placement, they present a project to all our stakeholders. So a project, sort of what they've achieved, how they've answered that question that we had, the meaningful occupation, and they have to write all that up. And then we're going to use that, and we're actually just about to go into collaboration with Sports for Confidence to look at doing the therapeutic value of blue space, a guide for healthcare professionals. So we're using their work with that to move on to that. So yeah, and then as the projects build over the 2 years, they're then building on the last project. So we'll hopefully have a really lovely document by the end of it with all the evidence there to say this should be used as an intervention. which is, it works for the stakeholders, it works for the unis, it works for us, it works for everyone. Then they've got the research skills, they've got leadership skills, which is great.
Yeah. Are there any comments that anyone wants to add? Any last words? No? Well, thank you very much for your presentations. And I mean, obviously it demonstrated that there are some different placement delivery approaches, project-based learning, peer-assisted, research and leadership placements, virtual placements using long-arm supervision across all pillars of practice. I think all those placements encapsulate so much different elements of learning, and obviously learners applied the CAWA model and they use blogging and vlogging to document their experiences. And also I think Cole, you spoke about shadowing senior leadership staff in positions and gaining some insights into the wider operational and management roles within the organisation, and also developing multiple skills and also confidence as well. So I think it really demonstrates so much different elements of placement for learners, and obviously the benefits to the providers as well. So I'm looking at the principles of practice-based learning, so the link should be in the chat, and just think about how you might consider the different placement approaches in your practice and your teams and across education, and also thinking differently about practice-based learning, which obviously these placements have, these examples have, and also the different approaches and what can we do within our teams and what would work for learners and our teams, and obviously increasing placement capacity for the future workforce, which obviously you've demonstrated in this placement today, in this presentation today. I'm going to try and share my slides again. Just bear with me. Sorry. Just 1 second. Okay, so there's a link here, so it should be in the chat as well. So there's a 5-minute reflection tool as well that you can use to capture any of your learning today. And also, if you just scan this QR code, and there's also a link here, link will be in the chat, and just give us some feedback on the placement on the webinar today and what we can do to improve and what you find useful. Okay, so these are the links for the principles of practice-based learning. And then also through the website, there are also some reflective scenarios about the placement cafe and the placement program as well that we have. So if you just have a look at the website. Okay, so thank you for your time and your thoughts. So I'm just having a little technical issue today. So if you'd like to be on social media, it's #RCOTPBL, practice-based learning. And also there's a link here for the website for all of the links that I'm talking about today. Okay, and our next webinar is on Monday, the 21st of September. So we'd like to see you there. Well, thanks very much for joining us.